Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. Today's show is a very special one, and I want to give a little background to it, if I may. I've mentioned on the show in the past that I hope everyone has made a note of this and remember this very important fact. But I actually moved to the Akron area in late 1974 and started playing in bands around 1977 and then on from there. One thing I always noticed was that people that were just a few years older than me all were in awe of a band called the Brambles. That name would come up, and people were like, oh, man, I saw them. They were amazing. I'd never seen anything like this. And there were all these incredible stories about, they had this guy with this amazing hair, and a guy played electric violin, and they had a fantastic light show. And it was just like I'd hear these stories, and it was just like, it was amazing to me because it was like, well, who are these guys? I keep hearing about them, but I never saw any records by them or anything. And so as years have gone on and Nick and I started doing our show here, Nick mentioned the Brambles, and I thought, like, okay, this is where we finally get to the legend. We finally find out, we solve the mystery. And so we're very happy and very lucky for this episode to have Rick Petrak and Tom Schranz, the guitar player and drummer from the Brambles, and they are our special guests, and we are going to actually delve into their story, and we're going to look forward to hearing some of their music, which I think a lot of people heard a long time ago and haven't heard for many years, and I think this will be exciting for all of you out there who remember and loved the Brambles. So I'm going to hand this off to Nick here because he actually saw this band. And Nick, what you have to say? What are your memories?
We'll go back to 1968.
All right.
Terry Walker and I, way before we formed the Bizarros, we're just, juniors in high school, and we heard about this folk club on Johnson Street called The Birth, and we walked up there and changed our lives, There was this band that there was a light show going on. There were all these little amoeba kind of oil things forming and reforming shapes
now, Nick,
behind
this was
them.
An actual light show, not just in your head, right?
It's true. There wasn't the brown acid. It was the real thing. And they were just great, man. The place was packed, and halfway through the set, probably, I don't know, was a guy comes out, puts his guitar down, he starts playing electric violin. And we never saw that, This band, Terry and I were getting into bands like, from the Quicksilver Messenger Service, Jefferson Airplane, the whole San Francisco scene. And here it was right in front of us here in Akron on Johnson Street.
Yeah.
And, let's say a month or so later, we were at Akron U's bookstore, and interesting looking album was picked up by Terry. It was the first Velvet Underground album. And he had John Cal playing electric viola. So then we put them together and with the Brambles, and that was a hell of an influence on the Bizarros.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It was where Terry got his start, and wanting to do something a little different, and we were 16.
Wow. Okay.
And then another cool thing besides the Brambles, a young Bob Kidney and a guy by the name of Gary Hawk would open a few times, and it was way before the Numbers Band. Bob was playing acoustic guitar. Gary Hawk.
They opened for the Brambles.
Yeah, Gary Hawk had the harmonica, and they were great too. So it was like the infancy of the two Akron legends.
Right. Well, let's bring a couple of these legends in here.
Yeah, and they're here.
They're actually here, right. And so I guess we'll start with you, Rick. What were your early music influences? Like go way back. Like, how did you get into music before the Brambles were even an idea?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was in 7th grade, I believe.
Okay.
And, of course, naturally, that was around 60 62, 63. And my influences at the time were like Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, all the great English lead guitarists.
Yeah.
And I would learn the leads, put on a 33 1/3 record, and either slow it way down or just keep repeating it over and over,
right?
Figuring out the lead parts that they were playing, and by imitating their styles, I developed my own, and gradually got influenced and formed the Brambles.
Okay. Now, when you formed the Brambles, what was your idea to try to play the kind of music that you had heard, or was it to?
Yes, it was basically we were doing copy material of like Led Zeppelin and Cream,
sure, right,
Yardbirds,
yeah,
that type music,
right,
psychedelic.
Right. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. So, when did you guys first? Well, how did the band get together? Let's start there. So
I was in high school. And,
so you guys were all in high school?
Yes.
Okay.
There were two fellas that were in the same grade as I was, a junior year. Bill
what high school? Since?
Highland.
Okay.
Highland High School. The original four members were all from Highland.
All right.
And three of us were in juniors, and Greg Burry was the bass player, who I actually went down to Prospect Avenue in Cleveland to get his first bass. It was a St. George, I believe. And then I basically taught him how to play. And then, like myself, he would pick things up off the records and just duplicate that.
Yeah.
And eventually you start adding your own styles to it. So that was basically the type of material we were doing.
Okay.
Of course, in the very beginning, you were doing stuff like Little Latin, Loopy Loo, and Louie Louie,
right.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Still good, exactly.
And so when did this electric violin guy get involved?
That was later on, maybe 67, probably at least. And I didn't know Bruce Davies at the time. He was also from the Akron Falls area.
Okay.
And I'm really not sure how Bruce got into the group.
Yeah.
It just kind of fell together, I think.
He was a friend of mine.
He was a friend of Tom's.
Of Tom's, okay.
Later on, he was playing for the Akron Symphony. I know that, and I guess people lost track of him.
Okay.
And then I believe he played for the Syracuse Symphony also.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Now, did you guys just start like rehearsing in a basement or a garage or something? Or?
We had an old schoolhouse actually out in Hinckley, Ohio.
And a barn.
Off of 606. And we rehearsed there almost every day we rehearsed. That's probably one of the reasons why we got so tight.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So you have to play every day to get that feel. Know each other.
Yeah, and that's really a thing when you're young, right? You have the time and you can do that.
You have the time.
Yeah, to put that all together. So then Tom, was he the original drummer?
He was our second drummer.
Okay.
And when Tom came in, it was like night and day. He just added so much power to the group. The fellow before, although he was adequate and good, Tom just took us to another level.
Yeah. So. Well, I think we can all agree that the drummer is the most important part of any band, right, Nick?
Oh, they think
you don't need any other members.
They control, whether our set's 30 minutes or 35 minutes, how fast they play.
Yeah.
I learned how to play a minute waltz in an hour.
So you guys are a bunch of high school guys, and you're rehearsing. Do you remember your first gig?
I remember that we started ourselves performing at a place called Eagle's Nest. It was out in Sharon, just south of Route 18 on 94.
Okay.
It was at Valley View Lake Park.
Okay.
They had a big pavilion there, and we'd known the owner because we'd been swimming there for years, and they had football practice there, and he agreed to give it a go and try having the Brambles perform there.
Okay.
And it gradually grew. Maybe we'd get 100 people, then 200, and that was basically the first steady performing place that we performed.
Were you guys nervous? I mean, that's even 100 people is a lot of people for a first show.
We were young and cocky.
No nerves.
Were you always called the Brambles?
Yeah, pretty much.
And where did that name come from?
It came from a book, actually. It's called The Bramble Bush.
Okay.
And we all thought that was a great name.
It is a good name.
Yeah.
So that you kind of started building your following playing at the Eagle's Nest, pretty much?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that might be where my wife saw you. She got very excited when I told her that we were going to do this show. She was like, "Oh, the Brambles!" And I heard, I know, the light show, the electric violin guy, the dude with the hair. Okay.
Yeah, the light show was pretty amazing for the times. I always felt that the Brambles were ahead of their time.
Yeah.
You were, man, the only one in this area that had a show like that.
That were doing like the hard rock more.
Yeah. Well, that's the impression I've gotten, is that you guys were like local guys who were bringing, like Nick alluded to the San Francisco bands, kind of like bringing that bigger palette of a stage show to this area.
Better musicians. I thought these guys were great compared to some of the San Francisco bands.
Yeah, really? Okay. Yeah.
So when we were into a lot of the jams, we would have extended jams in the middle of the songs, which was unusual for that time, too. Most of the groups were sticking to a regimented, play the song just like the record kind of thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned something interesting a minute ago about that wasn't your actual light show. It was somebody you knew that just followed you.
People from Akron pretty much got it together. Dave Scroggie and...
oh, really,
well,
Dave?
It was Joe Ogren's friends that were in Cleveland. Jeffrey something or other. They had projectors.
Yes.
And he brought them down to start that off. And they actually had three different projectors going at the same time at the Eagle's Nest.
Yes, and they actually knew how to... you mentioned the light show as the slide. They were actually slides with oil on them.
Yeah.
That they would put on the hot light on the cameras, and it would melt and then start doing all the flowing behind the band.
Yeah.
We also actually made live, like 16 millimeter shows that we put together as just kind of silly stuff, like the Beatles, kind of like Hard Day's Night, where they're just running around and doing stuff.
Yeah.
So that we also incorporated that into the light show.
It made a huge impression on people who saw you guys. I mean, it
50 years later, we're talking about 53 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, the light show is definitely one of our unique attributes besides the electric violin.
Yeah.
But if that Jeffrey guy and the other guy didn't come, the light show wasn't there.
Right.
At the birth, was it at the birth?
Yes, where I saw it at the birth.
All right.
They would arrive early and put up these huge sheets of white paper to project behind the band, the light show.
It was a real ordeal.
Yeah, it was. It took them longer to set up, I think, than the band, actually.
Just out of curiosity, how is the birth spelled? Is this B-E-R-T?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I thought maybe it was B-I-R-T.
No, it had a couple incarnations later on, but the original one was there and it was gone just a couple of years.
Okay. So you guys are playing there. That's kind of your club. But obviously you eventually are breaking out of that and are playing other shows, and you're playing other venues, and you're opening for bands, right?
We got closer to Akron, and where we started playing semi-regularly was a place called The Castle. It was on Crystal Lake Road It was
a big barn.
It was a big barn.
All right.
We played in the hayloft.
And yeah, they'd put you up on the upper loft, so you'd have to haul all your equipment.
Oh, that sounds fun, particularly for the drummer. Yeah.
But
it was a great deal.
Oh, it was.
The band sounded great in there
Because it was all wood, you know.
Yeah.
You know, the kids were all dancing down below us.
We started playing the Hullabaloo's.
Oh,
there were
yeah.
Hullabaloo's in all the cities all around Cleveland.
Okay.
And then we ventured out and we started doing the Grandy Ballroom in Detroit.
We got to tell us about that. That's exciting as hell.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The
That's
Grandy
a legendary
Ballroom was
place.
a fantastic place. Do
Yeah.
you remember it, Rick?
Yeah.
It was this old roller rink,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a floor that was wood, but they had this thing on top that went around, and I mean I'm 15 years old when we played there.
It's incredible.
And I'm watching. We opened for the McCoys.
Okay.
And this wasn't the McCoys that did their songs. This was an R&B band that was fantastic.
Oh,
And-
all right. Okay.
And I learned a lot from that band, by the way. But the interesting thing was, I was sitting there and I'm watching these guys pass joints, and it goes to the end of the row, and the cop takes the joint and takes a hit and passes it. I couldn't believe that happened.
that's Detroit.
You know?
That's Detroit.
Well,
But that's the kind of place that it was. And
Yeah.
people were still on roller skates, and they were going all over the place. And they were all dressed up wild, and it just fit in with the Brambles.
Yeah.
fit in with the whole aesthetic of the
Yeah.
Brambles. Yeah. I lived in Detroit before I lived here, and so the Grandy Ballroom is like, a
Legendary.
legendary
Yes.
place. I mean, MC5, Kick Out the Jams is recorded there, that album, that live album.
Stooges.
And, all those
Alice
bands
Cooper.
played there. Yeah, yeah.
And then the Grandy Ballroom opened up in Cleveland, and we opened up for Jeff Beck.
Okay, let's back up for 1 second. How do you make the leap from playing at the Eagle's Nest and the Castle to opening for Jeff Beck? I mean, did people reach out to you because you'd already had this reputation, or did you guys reach out? How did this happen?
Well, we finally...
Because I've never learned how this happens. I've been playing music for a long time.
It
and
never worked for us.
It never worked for me. Oh, yeah.
We wound up finally getting a manager,
Okay.
who was Joe Ogren, who was also the manager of the Disc Records at Summit Mall. And he
This is
became our
crazy.
manager.
We used to shop there.
Yes. We have a lot of
And
connections
not only
there.
did it help with getting us better performances, it also helped because he was the manager of Disc Records. We had everything at our disposal for music
Right.
at our
Right.
fingertips to
Right.
listen to and learn stuff. too. But he projected on to get us the better performances.
Okay.
And that's when we started. And we started playing freebies. Back then, you played freebies
Oh yeah,
for cancer fund. They had this thing for cancer, and they get the James Gang and E.T. Hooley, the Brambles, Penny Arcade, and a bunch of different bands to play free for these things. But it was a great promotion,
Right.
Because we got gigs off of it.
Right.
And
Right.
we started playing in different cities all around Cleveland and Akron. We were just limited to Akron.
Youngstown we went to.
Yep, Youngstown. That's where we got into a big fight.
Yeah.
See, back then,
I want to hear the story.
the
Don't
greasers
leave it
didn't
there.
like us because
greasers
their
hated
girlfriends
us.
were watching us on stage.
Long
and
hair.
they would fire these quarters and nickels and pennies, and they'd stick in the guitars, and if they hit you, they stuck in you. But afterwards, we're playing this gig, and I have a temperature of 103. I could barely even drum that day. And all of a sudden, there's this big ruckus outside. We're playing in the basement of this place. And they say, they're beating up on the band. Well, I'm not the band. They're not beating up on me. So Bruce Davies and me, Bruce Davies was the other coward. He stayed down there with me. And finally, I went out. And Burry, and probably you and Kanya were out there. And they were fighting these guys. And they had these microphones. The bases of the microphones were like lead. I mean, they were real heavy.
yeah.
And they had goosenecks, and they were swinging them around. And I saw these greasers flying off into the woods, It was but we got gigs off of that.
Yeah, for the Hells Angels, probably.
Yeah, It was definitely the surfers and the greasers back then.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, some of the other bands you opened for, I heard one was Cream.
Yeah.
Right.
I was at the Civic Theater downtown Akron.
It also had the Poor Girls and the James Gang
Yep.
and the Penny Arcade. It went on for hours. And I
they
actually
did.
remember my parents and my grandmother came to that show because, it was a big deal. Wow,
Sure,
opening
yeah.
at the Akron Civic Theater. And they sat there for the whole show. Obviously, one thing about the music back then for us, we played loud. We played as loud as possible.
Right,
Everything on 10. And ironically, half the songs I knew half the words for because it was just a feeling almost more than actually the words of the songs back then.
Right. Now, did you guys ultimately play, like you're talking about Detroit and Cleveland, Youngstown, this kind of like this area generally? Did you ever go venture out further than that? Or
With the Brambles, I don't remember ever going further out than
I think Detroit was the
Detroit,
furthest place. I think we were working on Chicago, but that didn't happen. There was a place called the Checkmate. It's a blues club in Chicago.
Okay.
We also played some blues stuff.
Okay.
We went
Yeah.
all psychedelic.
Well, everybody did Stormy Monday. Come on.
Yeah, even the psychedelic version.
Yeah.
This is From Akron and Beyond. I am Bob Ethington here with my co-host, Nick Nicholas, and we are talking with two members of the Brambles, Rick and Tom, about their memories of back in the mid to late 60s and just the exciting times that those were and what a key part to that music that those guys were.
Bob,
yes.
what's really cool is they brought a CD here today.
Yes, we're going to get to listen to some of the Brambles music. Will be part of the show, and we're very excited about that because a lot of the stuff hasn't been heard for years, I'm sure.
Or at all.
Or
Or at
ever,
all.
maybe. Yeah. So tell us about some of these other bands that you opened for. I'm very intrigued by this. You mentioned Jeff Beck. Was that with the Jeff Beck group with like Rod Stewart?
Yeah,
Yes.
Rod Stewart,
Okay.
Ron Wood, Mick Waller. We
Yeah.
saw them at Le Cave, which was a real small
Le Cave,
club.
yeah.
Famous.
And a couple hundred people. Nobody had ever heard of them because they hadn't come out with their album yet.
Wow. Okay.
And then we played. We opened up for them a few months later, at the Grandy in Cleveland, and it was completely sold out. I don't know how many people, but thousands of people were there.
Yeah. Did you guys have much interactions with these bands, or did they?
Not really.
Yeah.
We also opened for Procol Harum at
Oh,
Le
wow.
Cave
Okay. Yeah.
and Iron Butterfly.
Okay.
Iron Butterfly, they were nice guys. They're very nice guys.
Yeah.
But
Jeff Beck,
Yeah, well, he wasn't known for being cuddly, I don't think.
and Cream, they had such a strong accent that you couldn't even understand it, as well as Procol Harum.
You probably wouldn't want to know what Ginger Baker was saying anyway.
Yeah.
Fight of the drummers.
when we opened for Cream, that concert was almost canceled because Jack Bruce was in the hospital with an overdose of amphetamines,
Oh, really? Wow.
and so we didn't know if we were going to play or not.
Mm-hmm.
And they opened up, and Eric Clapton was known to be hooked on all kinds of stuff. Obviously, Jack Bruce was having problems.
Yeah.
And I can remember going up to the equipment guy that set up Ginger Baker's drums, because Ginger Baker used a wooden mallet on his bass drum. And
Okay.
I tried that with every kind of head known to man. And I went through it in like 10 seconds. I would go through the head.
Break the head, yeah.
So I looked at his drum, and he had this stuff on his drum head. And I asked his equipment manager, what is that? And I couldn't understand a word the guy said. Just like, So I said, what? And he repeated it, and I couldn't understand a word. So Ginger Baker came out, and after he was done, I asked him, what's that on your drum head? Couldn't understand a word he said. I later figured out there was probably construction adhesive.
Okay.
And that would have prevented.
Right.
But these are the ways you learn things.
Yeah. Sure.
But the interesting thing was that with Ginger Baker came out with a 12-pack of beer, and I was watching him the whole time. Didn't see him drink one beer, and I went out front to watch Eric Clapton for just a few minutes. And I went back in the back and on stage, and all of a sudden they're done, and those beers are all gone. Ginger Baker drank 12 beers. Nobody saw one.
I thought it was a case myself.
That's a lot. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Right.
Carney wanted me to tell that.
Yeah.
Don't take the wrong direction,
And of course, Ginger is late Ginger Baker is largely to blame for the phenomenon of the 25-minute drum solo that every band ended up playing in those days.
Yep.
Thankfully over. You don't see that much anymore.
think
Did you
we
do
did
that though,
something
Tom?
like-
Did
Yeah,
you
I
play
think-
the line
I
drum
think we
solos?
did.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was probably "Wake Me, Shake Me"
Yeah,
by the
they
Blues
did.
Project.
Oh wow.
The
Okay.
best stuff that we did though in the Brambles wasn't the note for note stuff that we did. It was, Rick brought in stuff of his own. We used to do old Chuck Berry stuff, and we did it in our style,
Right.
and it turned out fantastic. I mean, it really had an effect on people. You could see it, in the faces of people out there.
Yeah.
And we did Satisfaction, which wasn't Satisfaction at all. All we had to do was change the lyrics, and it would have been our song. But everybody loved things like that,
Yeah.
and that's the best stuff that we did, I think.
I remember we did a song that we got from Barbra Streisand, of all people. It was called "Gotta Move,"
Okay.
and of course it didn't sound like Barbra
Right,
Streisand,
yeah,
but it was a great song. We did our own version. A lot of it was doing our own versions of the songs.
Yeah.
Towards the end, before you split, how many originals would you say you were doing?
Ooh.
Few.
Yeah, at least one every set we would do. So because it's still tough when people want to hear something they're familiar with,
Yeah.
even if you only play it in your own style.
Right.
But they were pretty accepting of our original material.
Yeah.
And the thing with the band was people either loved us or hated us. There was no in between, which to me kind of all the good. Well, not like the Beatles. Everyone loves the Beatles, but a lot of the bands, people either love them or hate them, and that's. But when they love you, they love you.
Yeah.
and that's how your following really grows for
Yeah.
those people.
Yeah. Well, I've yet to meet the person that hated you guys. Everyone I've ever talked to loved you guys, and I think it's interesting that as you talk about what your material was, that it I think that made a big impression on people. There's bands that are cover bands, right? There's hundreds of bands that just play the songs note for note the way they were, and I think that touches on one of the effects you had on your audiences, was that you struck people as new, because you were taking this new approach, or at least your own approach to these songs that they knew, that's amazing.
Yeah, they weren't Vanilla Fudge. They were the Brambles.
Yeah.
Their versions of
Right.
It was very aggressive music at the time.
Now, it was Bruce Davies. I have to say that there does seem to be, from all the anecdotes I've heard about you guys, it did blow a lot of people's minds that there was this electric violin. And I'm thinking, like, you guys are doing this, he's doing this 67, 68, something like that, because I was thinking about it, knowing that we were going to be talking, and there was like Sugar Cane Harris, right? He played with Zappa, and that would have been around 69 or so. He played electric
Jefferson
violin.
Airplane, too.
And then the Airplane? Oh,
No,
he
he
played
played
with the
them,
Airplane.
yeah.
No, that was Papa John Creech.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And don't get me off track. and then, of course, Jean-Luc Ponty, and there was
It's a Beautiful Day.
and a Beautiful Day, yeah. And then there was, Jerry Goodman, who was in a band called The Flock, and then he played in Mahavishnu Orchestra. But anyway, I'm naming every one of the electric violin players I can think of. All of these guys date, in my head anyway, from a little bit later than when you guys were playing.
Later.
So was this like, I mean, I don't know if you can even answer this, but was this Bruce's idea? Was this something he just thought, like, I'll put a pickup on this violin and see what happens? Or how did that happen?
That's pretty much the way it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was his major instruments. It's what he played first.
I
the
see.
violin.
Okay.
And actually his vibrato on his guitar, most of the times you'd go back and forth with the strings, but he went up and down using the pressure on the string to get his vibrato, which gave him a unique sound too.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting.
And the other one I remember much later that really hit big with the violin was Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, right, sure.
So
That's right.
And that kind of music, that more reminds me of like Brambles style, more improvisation. And stuff.
Right.
We did a thing called, what Bruce did was out of a piece called Dance Macabre.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classical piece.
Yeah, okay.
And we integrated that in Wake Me, Shake Me, was it?
Yes, and he also did a Rachmaninoff part, which was pretty unique to learn the chords and everything for that on the guitar, because no one had ever done that. So
Right.
he automatically gave it a unique sound.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick was the singer for the most part.
Okay.
Every once in a while, somebody else would sing, but Rick was the singer.
Okay.
And I was the one that didn't know half the words.
But you did know half the words.
I knew half, yeah. The song was half full.
You have to empty.
Did you guys, so was a typical song long?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I don't think we did anything under 5 minutes.
They got longer and longer.
Yeah. Actually, probably the shortest ones were our originals.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But when we play at the Eagle's Nest,
Mm-hmm.
Here we have all these young kids out there, and they're all smoking dope.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we play, they'd eat up because they're not in their right mind.
All of a sudden, I'm beginning to understand why everyone loved the Brambles.
Yeah, they get an idea. Sometimes we weren't in our right mind. Actually, I was, but the rest of them weren't.
You were 15.
Yeah.
You don't get too high on Coca-Cola.
I did.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the James Gang. Did you play with them very often since they were from around here?
Yeah,
or,
we played with them quite a bit at what was it? Snow Trails up there at the ski lodge. Up by Brandywine in that area.
Oh, Brandywine, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Snow Trails was down there by Mansfield.
It was
We
Joe in the
played
band.
But we
then?
also played
Joe
a place
Walsh in
called
the band?
JB's.
No.
in
He
Kent.
wasn't yet.
Oh,
Okay.
JB's. He played.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They
yeah.
had two stages. Boston Mills Ski Lodge. That's what it was.
Boston
Oh,
Mills.
okay.
That's
Boston Mills would have bands on the weekends.
Okay.
They
where
packed
they
the
pitched
place.
the pennies.
Mm-hmm.
They packed the place. And the James Gang would be on one stage and we'd be on the other stage.
Okay.
Of course, the James Gang had the main stage.
Yeah.
But a lot similar crowd,
Yeah.
similar kind of music.
Right.
So
And probably Glass Harp, too. You probably played with them. I'm
yes,
guessing? Mhm.
yes. I opened for Glass Harp at Cloverleaf High School.
Oh, really?
One time, yeah. I was that was already past the Brambles, though.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing solo at the time.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys ever have any ambitions to record an album on your own then?
Well, the fact that we have recordings
Yeah.
means we wanted to record, but
Sure.
we never got any offers from any major labels.
So that what you brought was never on vinyl or anything.
No,
Okay.
no.
Oh, that's
It might
exciting.
have
It was most of it was on reel to reel.
Okay. Yeah.
Maximum 8-track, but most of it was probably 4-track, even 2-track.
Okay.
But I think the idea was to get a song here and there, and pretty soon we'd have enough for an album.
Right. Sure.
But it never got to that point. So.
Sounds like you guys were kind of like live music warriors in a way. That was your thing. You played a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
How did the band then ultimately come to an end? What happened?
That's a good question. I'm really not sure. It just kind of, I think Bruce took off.
Yeah.
He was having some money problems or something.
Yeah. something.
And once Bruce left, then we got Pete Goodman,
Okay.
and it just kind of fizzled out after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Tom and I were fortunate enough to continue playing,
Mm-hmm.
but I know Greg Burry, once the Brambles ended, he ended. He never picked up the bass after that.
Really? Wow.
And
Didn't know that.
he gave a lot of the band its
Yeah.
charisma because he was really into the performing end of it.
Mm-hmm.
He used to he got us thrown out of Menor Hullabaloo because he lit his arms on fire and the guy freaked out.
That's another thing. He'd light himself on fire every once in a while.
Yeah.
I'd look over to my left, and there he is, blazing away. You know?
And then there's another part of the Brambles. I don't know if it was so much with Tom, but in the beginning, we would have our freak out at the end.
Uh-huh.
We'd be playing My Generation by The
Okay.
Who or something.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, we're jamming the guitars into the amplifiers and
Right.
busting stuff up.
Feedback and craziness. Yeah.
Many times we'd spend more fixing our equipment from the performance before than we made. But it also was a drawing point for where people would stay to the end.
Mm-hmm.
They would want to hear everything, and because we can't wait, they're going to freak out.
You can't miss that, right?
Yeah, right.
But Saturday morning would be the time where they'd fix everything.
Yeah.
I remember Greg had this beautiful bass. It was a Rickenbacker bass. Expensive, wonderful instrument.
Yeah.
And he broke the head off, you know, and took it into Lay's guitar shop, and it came back and you couldn't tell. It played just as well as ever. It looked just like nothing ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that just...
But an interesting part about that was
Lay's
people
best
were into that, seeing the end when you'd smash stuff and everything.
Right.
But I think Greg got to the point where it disturbed him that the people were coming just for that than to actually hear the music.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember we got home from a gig one night, and he would take his basses out of the back of the car and just throw them on the ground. Well, that same Rickenbacker busted the head again when he threw it on the ground. He took that guitar, and there was a big oak tree in the front of his house, and he smashed it into pieces.
Oh, geez.
And it meant so much to him because I'm doing this because I want to, not because these people want to see me do it.
Oh, wow.
You know, and that was pretty much close to the end, actually.
All kinds of people showed up right after he did that. Like that.
Well, I think when you're a band that plays out a lot, that can you either thrive on that and love every second of it, or at some point it becomes kind of tiresome a little bit. I mean, I that was my experience in a band that I was in, was that, you know, I started to feel like, you know, we were playing every week, and it seemed like, you know, this seems like I'm not valuing the audience because I loved all those people, but it was kind of like the same people every week. You see, you know, and I was playing the same songs all the time. Yeah. And at a certain point, I just kind of got to the feeling it was like, we're just like a human jukebox here. You know, something needs to change. We need new songs, whatever. And yeah, that's the way that bands kind of sometimes can fizzle out. It's kind of like, are you up to making this next step of writing a bunch of new material, or doing what you need to do to change? So it sounds like that was maybe kind of part of your guys kind of just fizzling out a little bit.
Demise.
Yeah. But I want to get back to this guy setting himself on fire. So that sounds dangerous to me. I mean,
it sounded dangerous to the club owner too.
Maybe, you guys had to get like insurance or something for your bass
He had
player.
a old postman's jacket, which was very heavy.
Yeah.
He would line his arms with aluminum foil and put on the postman's jacket, and squirt lighter fluid on the postman's jacket. And that's how he proceeded to light himself on fire.
Aluminum foil does not sound like a good idea. That sounds like you're cooking yourself.
Well, how did we not know this?
It worked out.
That's a legendary story. You know?
You know, he did quit playing there for a while.
We're going to be looking forward to hearing some of these songs, that's for sure. Do you have any ones in particular you'd like us to play?
Well, I always like Cellophane World.
Okay,
That was one of my
that's a good
favorites.
title.
Yeah.
And Just Below High.
Okay, that's a good title too.
Those two are my favorites that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
But then several of the songs on there, the manager, actually, Joe Ogren, wrote a few of them.
Okay,
And Bruce Davies also wrote a few.
okay.
And the one that Bruce wrote, I can't remember, Unbearable Down.
Oh, wow.
When
You guys have great titles. I mean,
the beginning of the song is actually, I don't know if it's the Rachmaninoff or something, but you realize it's a classical sound right away.
Right.
Yeah.
We've had Rick Petrak and Tom Schrantz, the guitar player and drummer from the legendary band the Brambles on, and we're really thrilled. Really, I guess we could say we're debuting these songs.
Yeah,
right?
man, it's a thrill for me to actually be in the same room with these guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We never had any live performances recorded.
Really?
Back then, it never even dawned on us to do something.
Just
like
didn't
that.
occur to you. Yeah.
I believe, though, that Dave Scroggie had some.
We've had them.
Uh-huh.
They're around.
Yeah.
There's a guy that I went to high school with, and he did the Cream thing, and we were on there. So, but I don't know how to get. I don't even remember the guy's name. Carney's supposed to do that stuff for me.
But you got to understand, too, that recording quality on these songs,
Right.
some of them are recorded in my home, actually,
wow.
where the sound guys would be in the back bedroom,
I remember that.
and we'd be in the back patio where we set up,
Right.
and they were recorded actually in the house.
It was rough back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was virtually no overdubbing or anything like
Sure,
that, so it
right.
was basically a live
No
recording.
adjusting of intonation or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, rough demos, I guess we can call
Yeah,
them.
that's
Uh-huh.
what they are.
Yeah.
We're going to hold Brad to standards of, make it perfect, man.
That's right. Yeah, we're hoping that you can do that.
I hate to be so open-ended in this, but do any other stories occur to you guys? Just little memories that kind of stick out of maybe particular shows you played or particular bands you played with or someone else who tried to set themselves on fire or something?
I was going to say that.
Oh, wow.
He didn't have a memory anymore, and I can't remember anything.
But you guys, those were good times for you, right? Right?
Oh,
Am I
yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was the summer of love.
Yeah.
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 And we were playing, you didn't have to have a venue. You just needed a field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people would come, and
Yeah.
it was great. And wherever we went, we go out to eat afterwards. We'd have 30, 40 people with us, from the gig.
Right.
And it was a very revolutionary time in our
Yes.
country's
Sure.
period with Vietnam and everything.
Right.
So we kind of represented, I think, the angst or the resentment, not really resentment, but just hardcore, we don't want to do this, or
Right.
we're against this.
Rebellion.
Rebellious.
Yeah.
I think the music represented that a lot.
Well, I mean, Nick has been eloquent about this on the show already, but, I'll just say that, it's been a thrill to have you guys here. And I don't know if you realized the impact that you guys had on the people that went to see you, because I can verify. All I know of you is what I've heard. And everything I've heard is when I would mention that we were going to have you guys on the show, and people who had seen you back in those days, the reaction was uniformly, "Oh man, those guys were great." I mean, people would rave about the Brambles, as much as they would rave about seeing some of the biggest names bands that they might have seen at the time.
Absolutely, because there wasn't nothing to compare them with locally.
And I think that's it. I think that you like brought that music and that whole energy to
we were so
this
bad,
area.
there was no comparison. No, but you don't know that when you're playing,
Right.
and if Nick wasn't here, we wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I talked to people. I mean, I left Akron and I've lived in Cleveland for over 50 years, and so I don't know what goes on here anymore and who was influenced or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, Carney and Willendorf told me some things, but we don't know. I didn't know.
Yeah.
We
should point out this Carney person that keeps getting mentioned is
Carney.
Our friend Jim Carney, who
Art
helped
Carney.
out. It's Jim Carney, who we've actually had on the show, and a good friend of mine, and he helped orchestrate getting this all together tonight.
Thanks, Jim.
So, thank you, Jim.
Yes, thanks, Jim.
So this has been From Akron and Beyond. I am Bob Ethington with my co-host, Nick Nicholas. This show has been featuring the Brambles and the legend of that band, and I hope you enjoy the music that we will be playing as the show comes to its end, and we will see you all next time.